Where do you stand on that, Kevin, as we kind of like think about safety? Do you want to add one and kind of put it to bed, or do you want to add one in the draft? Like, what's your philosophy to kind of get rid of a position group from a needs list?
No, I think I'm good in free agency now. I've seen people in the comments are asking about Blackmon, maybe Justin Simmons, and I think that the Bills are pretty much done. And we'll get to this more later on in the show, but I think from here on out, we're going to see a defensive tackle signing and an RB2 signing. And I know some people are saying that you can draft that big bruiser in the draft. I think at least we're going to see that defensive tackle signing. It was reported today that Austin Johnson is in town visiting with the Bills. I think that would be a great signing. And he was one of my targets yesterday, actually. I was going to say a couple days ago, but I tweeted the list yesterday about some remaining free agent targets. So I would love to see the Bills bring in Austin Johnson. Daquan Jones would too, for that matter, if you've been keeping up with his Twitter. I think that I'm pretty good at safety now, because tying this in with what you were talking about with the contract that they probably gave to Mike Edwards, let's just say it was a 1 year, $4 million deal, right? Because that seems in the right ballpark. So I think if you give Mike Edwards a relatively cheap contract, you're already paying Taylor Rapp like a safety 2 or a safety 3. He got a 3-year, $10.3 million deal. I think this sets him up perfectly to be able to draft that rookie, because let's not forget they re-signed Cam Lewis and they have Damar Hamlin. And I know people will say that Damar is a cut candidate, but we'll take it for what it is right now. The Bills have 4 safeties under contract, and they're probably going to have more when it's all said and done. So I think from here on out, this gives the Bills a flexibility to be able to draft that safety, but they don't have to rush for it. They don't have to reach and say, we need a free safety. Let's go get one in the first round. Like I said at the beginning of this show, this allows them to still draft that wide receiver, but then they can kind of have a little bit of fun with finding that safety, maybe some trade ups or some trade downs. But now safety is not as pressing of a need following the Mike Edwards news today.
Yeah, and I sure would like to see some more from the safety room. So I'm a little bit different than you. I don't need a free agent safety from here. Obviously, there's only really 2 that I would say would help this roster out, and that's Justin Simmons. Will he be redundant now with Mike Edwards? I mean, I think the real pairing, especially to me, would be with, otherwise someone's got to play in the box, and then Rapp would still be playing, and Mike Edwards would go to a 3 if you do go with the Simmons, which is possible. I just don't see the Bills going to the price point, hence probably why they looked at the other 2. But from a safety standpoint, I'd really like to see the Blackmon pairing. I think it would be really fun. I think they would have 4 good safeties on the roster. Probably makes Hamlin on the outside looking in from the roster spots wise, especially if they go that route. But then it also takes a huge need away from the draft room and frees up draft picks. So I think if they can get Blackmon for around $4 million as well or less, I think the Bills are in a really good position to kind of pair their new safety pairing up. And with a free safety, so they say that Mike Edwards is best when he has a pure, strong safety with him. And I think from the option to have somebody like Blackmon and Rapp on the other side could maximize all their value. And guess what? If we have an injury again, they're in a little bit better of a situation than we were this season, especially with Rapp going out. The Bills didn't have that third safety look, and that kind of hurt them down the stretch. And then they didn't have linebackers, as we know how that story goes. They went out and got Nicholas Morrow, to make sure that they have some solid depth there behind their starters. So totally entrenched new middle of the field that the Bills are rolling out with, and I'd like to see them go with Blackmon too, because I think he's a baller. So I have to imagine, with that being wrapped into a bow, that the Bills are still in on Blackmon based on what the price point would be. From all accounts that I've heard within people I trust, that they were still interested in him. I don't know if that has changed in the last few hours. It's very possible that could have changed based on the number here from Edwards. The more money that Mike Edwards got, the least likely any other move is made. If he got something reasonable, that would signal to me the Bills are interested in seeing his medicals and maybe making something happen. So we'll see how that all plays out to kind of put a bow on that safety room that the Bills will probably, I still think, add to it. So it's either going to be with a signing like Blackmon, or it's going to be in the draft. So I think that there is still one more spot to be had because ultimately it's still just Cam Lewis and Taylor Rapp there. So I think they would like to have a 4th, and then right there on the 5th would be Hamlin. So that's kind of how I see the safety room going. It's coming to a little bit more into picture now with how this is all developing, but I feel pretty strong about that. That's going to be a good unit. Anything else that you saw from Edwards that you like, Kevin? Any other notes, Any other nuggets or anything that you saw around that encouraged you about the signing?
Well, I do have his box score stats here.
Okay.
So 4 years with Tampa Bay, again, he was a fringe starter sharing snaps with Jordan Whitehead and Antoine Winfield. And who was the other one that you said? Logan Ryan, I believe, was there too.
Late in the, at the end of his career, at the end of his Tampa Bay time. Yep.
Yeah, so Tampa Bay cycled through a lot of safeties, and Edwards was just kind of that steady, consistent safety 2, safety 3 for them. So, I mean, the good news is he played in a lot of the games. I'm not sure of his injury history, but I haven't heard too many injuries here. And you can see 2 interceptions in 2020, 3 interceptions in 2021, and then 2 the following year. And the most tackles that he had was 82 in 2022 in just 13 games played. So, I mean, some pretty solid numbers there from Mike Edwards. Now, speaking of injuries, I wanted to ask you about this with Julian Blackmon, because we've heard rumblings that the Bills have been interested in Blackmon, but one of the things that could be holding them up is his injury history. And this is a guy who tore his ACL. And what was his most recent injury? Was it an Achilles too?
Yes. For who? Sorry, for who? Blackmon?
Blackmon, yeah. Because
no,
I know
it was shoulder was his most
okay.
recent. Yeah.
So it was the ACL in 2019 in December. So that might have been during a bowl game. I'm not sure. I'd have to check. But when he was in college, at the end of that season, he tore his ACL, and then that might have knocked his draft stock back a little bit, but then he was able to recover in time for the NFL. But he's been injury riddled a lot. And like you said, with that shoulder injury being the most recent one, I'm wondering if that is something that prohibited the Bills from going after Blackmon, and maybe their price range was a little bit off, where he said, hey, I'm 25. I want a second contract that's pretty favorable. And the Bills said, we want to give you a relatively favorable contract, but we can't give you more than, let's just say, $5 million because of your injury history. We suffered a lot of injuries. We're trying to get younger and healthier and more durable. So maybe that's why they went with Mike Edwards. Even though he's 2 years older, he's a little bit more durable.
Yeah, you're definitely onto something. I don't know if he thinks now that all the safety spots are filling up. I think that money's kind of dried up, especially mostly in free agency, but especially at the free agent safety spot. So maybe unless he goes back to Indy or whatever may be the case there, I don't ultimately see him getting money. So I think he's kind of choosing, I'll be honest, he's probably choosing his spot based on $2 or $3 million. That's probably where he's, deciding where he's going to play, because he's a much better safety than that. And he's going to be able to handpick what he wants to do in his free agent destination. So I think that the Bills probably had a number on him and said, hey, if that works for you, let's get a call and let's get this thing going. So I don't know that that's off the table at any point, really, for any player. It could be at basically any position, maybe even still receiver or whatever you want to talk about. If someone calls him back and says, yeah, I'll play for that, the Bills will sign them. So it doesn't really matter. All it will do is alter their draft plan. So if it's at the receiver position, let's say, whoever it may be that's still good out there, is there anyone left that would even alter the receiver plans? I still think the Bills want to get in a 4 to 5 year wide receiver with Josh Allen. We'll kind of chat about that at the end of the show, but the safety room is definitely coming together with the Rapp re-signing. With Cam Lewis is actually getting some significant, decent money to play special teams and be a depth piece. And then we'll wait on the Edwards money. So will the Bills add to that room still? I think they will. But will it come in the draft or will it come in one of these free agency names? Still kind of remains to be seen. But I don't think it necessarily takes them out of the running for any of the remaining free agent safeties. So
I just want to say, I looked this up on Blackmon. It was an Achilles injury in 2021. So it was the ACL in 2019, Achilles in 21, and now most recently the shoulder.
Yeah, right. The most recent is the shoulder, though.
Oh, yeah. But
yeah.
When I asked about the Achilles, I thought you said no. And I was like, I thought I heard.
Oh, no. It's not the most recent. The most recent is okay. What they're reviewing. Those are fine. What they're reviewing now is the shoulder. That's the thing that is still in question. So I think people are reviewing the shoulder to see when he'll be ready. He's saying he's going to be ready to go with that shoulder, but teams are going to have to make their own decision on Blackmon. And so a team wouldn't bring him in if they didn't think that they were pretty serious about an offer. So it's still pretty interesting to see where Blackmon will end up. I'd be pretty interested to sign him. I think he'd be a really good addition still based on the final money of both of these guys. So we'll kind of see how that goes.
So just so we're all on the same page now. So he did tear his ACL at the end of 2019. He came back in 2020, got drafted by the Colts, played in 15 games, started 14 of them. Then in 2021, he started all 6 games that he played in, but then he tore his Achilles. 2022, he came back, played 14 games, started 11 of them. And then this past year in 2023, 15 games, 15 starts, and then he suffered that shoulder injury. So every other year he's been injured. So I guess maybe this year is his healthy year. So maybe a cheap 1-year deal, I could see it. But realistically, after today, I just think that the Bills are going to attack defensive tackle, maybe a running back, and then let's just hit it with the draft.